Today I'm going to show you how much money you can save on some of the most in-demand Rolex watches by choosing a similar model. I believe these alternative picks can provide 90%, if not more, of the experience of owning the most popular watches on the market. Okay, so if you've always dreamed of owning a stainless steel Rolex Submariner Date, you like the aesthetics, the history, and the status associated with the watch, but you're not so keen on the price tag or the waitlist at the AD, I'm going to tell you that there is no such thing as a true replacement for any watch that you truly desire. Say you purchase a Tudor Black Bay or an Omega Seamaster Diver 300M to fill the position of your dream dive watch. Both are fantastic timepieces, and I'm sure that you'd get plenty of enjoyment from wearing them. However, they will never be a Rolex Submariner, and in most cases, over time, your original desire for the sub will start to grow in your mind once again. It doesn't matter if the replacement watch that you purchased is technically superior or better value. It doesn't make sense, it isn't rational, but if you were looking for a rational purchase, you'd probably buy a Casio and call it a day. So, before we look at the alternative value picks to the most popular models, bear in mind that for some people, it's best to save and buy the exact watch to avoid regret, even if it costs more. To define the scope of the value watch selections in this video, they're all modern, so can be worn daily without extra special care that might be associated with a vintage timepiece. They're all relatively easy to find in the market with a bit of shopping around for a good example, and all of the watch prices are including box and papers and from professional dealers. Okay, so with that in mind, the first watch on the list is the Rolex Submariner Date, reference 126610LN. This is the current production model that was first released in 2020. The watch can be found in the market for around £11,000 depending on the age and condition. However, to save around £2,000, you could opt for the previous generation Submariner. This is the 40mm reference 114060 that was in production from 2012 to 2020 and does not have the date function. I picked this on purpose as it can be found for less than the date version. Aesthetically, the watch is very similar to the current model. The main difference is the case shape, specifically the lugs, which are wider compared to the 1-2 reference. The bracelet on the 114060 starts at 20mm and tapers down to 16, whereas the newer model starts at 21mm and slims down to 17. In reality, the current 41mm model measures to be less than 1mm bigger than the 40, so the difference in feel on the wrist is going to be negligible. For most people, unless you had them side by side, you'd struggle to notice the difference. Well, aside from the lack of date, but that's pretty obvious. When it comes to the iconic design of the Submariner, Rolex likes to make incremental changes. In a way, it's similar to a Porsche 911. You could line up each generation side by side and see a clear evolution of a familiar design. Rolex did upgrade the movement for the new model with a longer power reserve of approximately 70 hours compared to the 48 hours of the previous generation. This won't be a deal breaker for most, as you won't notice a difference in the real world when wearing the watch. So, let me know, does the 40mm sub tick the boxes for you, or are the small improvements worth the extra money for the current model? But what if you see yourself as more of a spelunker than a diver?
Spelunking? Yeah, you know, cave diving.
You might be drawn to the Explorer 2, and the most popular dial without a doubt is the Polar White. The current reference, 226570, was released in 2021 and can be found for a little over list price from around £9,000. Now, if you want to save some cash, you could opt for the previous generation model that's almost indistinguishable in the looks department. Like the updates to the Submariner in 2020, the Explorer 2 received slight changes to the case and the bracelet, alongside an updated movement with a longer power reserve. The new model has slimmer lugs, and the bracelet width starts at 22mm instead of 21 before tapering down. The slimmer lugs and wider bracelet results in a smoother transition than on the previous generation. The case of the watch sits on the wrist rather flat and low with a relatively thin 12.5mm height, so I wouldn't describe the watch as bulky despite its 42mm size. The biggest saving will be available to those who would consider the black dial model that was produced between 2011 and 2021. This can be found from around £7,500, saving you a potential $1,500 compared to a new white dial watch. One difference to note is that the hands on the black dial 216 reference are coated black at the centre to give a somewhat floating appearance, whereas on the new model they're uncoated and the white gold is fully visible. Some of you will aspire to own what is likely the most famous chronograph in the modern collection. The Steel Panda Daytona was released in 2023 with the reference 126500LN. This may be the most difficult steel sports watch to obtain at retail price. High demand and low supply results in a market price of around £29,000. Some notable updates with the new model include a steel surround to the ceramic tachymeter bezel, and a slimmer look to the subdials and battens on the dial. The case shape was updated to have symmetrical lugs with a flat profile on the ends, and crown guards that are more pointed. The overall aesthetic gives a subtle nod to vintage references of the past while embracing the latest technology from Rolex in the manufacturing and movement department. It's well known among Rolex enthusiasts that the Daytona at 40mm wears beautifully on the wrist, and the new model is no exception. However, if you want to get that Daytona experience and keep around £11,500 in your pocket, you could look back not one but two generations to the 116520. This model was in production between 2000 and 2016. It features the same 40mm case size and oyster bracelet, but the two most obvious differences are the polished steel bezel and silver subdials. This model was the first Daytona to be fitted with an in-house Rolex movement in the caliber 4130, and more than 20 years on, this has proved itself to be one of the best in the business. The white dial can be found in the market from around £17,500, and if you prefer the black dial you can save even more. The steel bezel Daytona models continue to be popular among Rolex buyers who prefer the classic look. The GMT-Master II needs no introduction, and you'd be hard pushed to ignore the lure of the Pepsi if you have any desire for a pilot's watch from Rolex. However, as most of you will know, up there with the Panda Daytona, this model is very difficult to obtain. The 40mm GMT is most frequently requested on a Jubilee band, and I have to agree that it looks right at home on the distinct 5-link bracelet made famous by the Datejust in 1945. Right now, you'd need to part with around £17,000 to pick up a Pepsi in the market. But if you're prepared to swap half a red bezel for black, you might find yourself approximately £3,750 better off with a BLNR on your wrist instead. Nicknamed the Batgirl for the arguably more feminine appearance of the Jubilee as opposed to the oyster bracelet of the Batman, you can enjoy a watch that's simply a different colour for a lot less money. As a side note, I personally felt the Batgirl should have been called the Bruce Wayne before the new black and grey GMT was announced, as clearly the Jubilee is more formal and that's what Bruce Wayne would wear with a suit when he isn't fighting crime. But I digress. Now, if you can take one step further and are open to an oyster bracelet, you could consider the original Batman reference 116710 BLNR. That watch was produced between 2013 and 2018. These models can be found from around £11,000, which is £6,000 less than the Pepsi. Again, if your heart's set on the iconic blue and red bezel of the Pepsi, I would wait until you can comfortably buy that exact watch to satisfy your true desire. But for value seekers out there, the Jubilee Batgirl or Oyster Batman might be the best way to enjoy a GMT-Master II, and you could use the money that you saved to travel and make some memories with that timepiece, which you would probably value more in the long run. Maybe a thoroughbred sports model isn't right for you, and instead you want a Rolex that is equally at home under the cuff of a shirt in the office as it is during a swim in the pool on holiday. Enter the best-selling model from the crown, that is the Datejust, and more specifically, Watch Trader's best-selling variant, the Datejust 41. The most popular configuration without a doubt being the Jubilee bracelet with the white gold fluted bezel. The dials in the highest demand right now are the mint green and the Wimbledon, but they also command the highest premiums in the market from around £11,000. While the 41mm is a great size for a lot of you guys out there, I believe the fact that the 36 was the default size for men for such a long time shouldn't be overlooked. In my opinion, the 36 sits well on the wrist and exudes an air of elegance and class. You can pick up the fluted Jubilee combination with a crisp white or black dial from around £8,500, which is an approximate saving of £2,500 on the 41mm. Those seeking further value in a modern Datejust can look to the 116234 reference that was released in 2005 and ceased production in 2018. This model has a slightly larger case shape compared to the current 36 and can be found with the concealed clasp Jubilee bracelet for a seamless look. Both reasons that some people may prefer this model altogether. You can find these from around £6,500, which would save you in the region of £4,500 when compared to the Datejust 41 Wimbledon. If you have a collection, or plan to have one, a 36 could provide some size variation alongside typically larger sports watches. If you've made it this far and would like to buy or sell any of the watches mentioned here, head to watchtrader.co.uk. Okay, so that wraps up this video. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments, as well as any other value picks in the market right now. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more content like this, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.